Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Tears of Alron by Vasily Mahanenko, translated by Jared Firth, narrated by Henry William Kramer. Chapter 1. Where are you going? The path forward was barred by a guard, wearing level 5 armor. Powerful, fearsome, and practically unbeatable, he would have instilled terror in anyone. Well, anyone but Forian Tarn, level 44 mage, one of the best the Magic Academy had turned out over the previous few years, and a favorite of the Magic Card Department Dean. There with me. Here's their pass. It was nearly impossible to tell what Forian was actually wearing. His armor was disguised as the snow-white robe worn by Academy mages. With that said, anyone observant and knowledgeable enough could see the giveaways revealing that it was level 4. There was the patch on the sleeve, the pattern on the collar, the unusual hood. The pass disappeared in the hands of the guard, as though it were nothing, a special mark immediately appearing next to the mage's companions, indicating that they were to be let through without being checked, as long as they were with Forian. Access received to the Academy Library. Go ahead. The guard stepped to the side, letting the odd trio through. While it made sense to see Forian there, the mage having gained incredible notoriety, even among those outside the world of magic, nobody would have expected to see the two kids. Of course, Academy students often drop by the library after winning a pass for exceptional work, but they were all at least 15 years old, and even if the girl might have been close enough at 12, the boy was just 11. What had they done to earn the provost's favor? Taking Valia by the hand, Tailyn did his best to avoid looking around, despite the fact that his curiosity was eating away at him. And it wasn't just that he wanted to see what the interior looked like. Over the previous 2 weeks he'd spent living at the Academy, the boy had gotten more than his fill of riches and splendor. No, he'd finally finished the Mage's Encyclopedia, and found out that the Academy Library was famous for its unique collection of books, supposed to be burned as soon as they were discovered. The system ruthlessly destroyed everything still around that the ancients had written, the sole exception being that there had to be a copy already in the Academy Library. If not, the finder was handed a mandatory mission, requiring them to turn the book over to the mages, on pain of death. The god kept a close, scrupulous eye on dealings like that, and the books in the library couldn't be copied, logged, stolen, or destroyed. The only options were looking at them, or, if you had the personal permission of the provost, reading them. Forian had exactly that permission. The hero who had delivered to the torturer's table Vu Raga, the greatest of the Lick shamans, was given quite a bit of leeway, and that even included bringing his 2 students with him to the library. Unable to say no to the dean, Forian had taken Valia Lavore under his wing, automatically pulling the girl over to their department. She'd gone from battle magic to magic cards. The energy field protecting the entrance to the library's Holy of Holies disappeared, and the group stepped into an enormous room, packed with shelves. To the boy, it looked like the store, but as soon as the protection was gone, Forian explained what they were doing there. As you both know, my mysticism isn't working. My mana refuses to regenerate. None of my colleagues or the other mentors are able to help, which means I'm going to figure it out myself. Everything around you was written by the ancients, after the gods showed up on our planet. Presumably, this has happened before. I can't imagine it's unique. So, if you look around, you'll see that the Keeper collected almost 7,000 tomes that mention magic and its use. That's too many for me. Your help is going to be invaluable. We need to look for any mention of blocked attributes, mysticism or otherwise, as well as how to unblock them. Does that make sense, or do I need to repeat myself? Will even the 3 of us be enough? The boy asked, as he scanned the list of books dubiously. What if they all have 1,000 pages? We won't even have enough time to leaf through them. We have to be enough, his mentor replied, the emphasis on the second word. Anyway, we're wasting time. Repeat back to me what we're looking for, and we'll get started. Mentor, what if we take a different tack? Valia had her doubts as well. Instead of looking for parallel situations, why don't we figure out the reason behind the problem? I thought about that, Forian replied. After taking the pair on as students, he'd taken to speaking with both of them as equals, explaining everything calmly. The pool of red acid is the reason why the attribute was blocked, but Vu Raga doesn't know how the liquid works, or how it drains mana from mages. Actually, it just works on people. Trying to hang up elixirs up just got them burned immediately. Halast is the only one who knows, and he presumably isn't going to tell us. And we can't study the acid, since it even eats through glass. But the walls of the pool and the rope they used to hold you up were fine, the girl said. Organic matter and baked clay, the mage replied. Red acid barely does anything to them.
So, we can study it. We just need a special container. Something simple, the kind of thing potters in some village might make, Tailyn said. The conversation was turning to alchemy, which was his turf. And we know where there might be another pool.
We can't say for sure if there is one in the abandoned city where they wanted to sacrifice you. Most likely, there's just a terminal there. Okay, tell me what we're looking for and we'll get started, Forian said after a pause. He'd thought about the city too, though he'd ended up deciding to go with more tried-and-true methods, to start with at least. The library keeper turned out to be a gray-haired old man, but Tailyn couldn't read his attributes, even including his name, his perception just giving him Keeper, level 352. Placing his load down on the table, as if it was made of expensive and fragile crystal, the gentleman set off for the next batch. The system kept close track of what belonged to it. All around each book, there was a protective field that kept the pages safe from the ravages of time. Tailyn reached out to pick up the book that looked the thinnest to him. He could read, but he didn't enjoy the process. That earned him a disapproving glare from Valia. The girl pointedly picked up the fattest tome, while Forian ignored their childishness altogether. He was too busy leafing through another book, in search of a way to unblock his attribute. It was just a good thing the books weren't encyclopedias. Tailyn didn't have to memorize every page before turning it, though the bad news was that the first book was a dud. Sure, it was interesting to read the names of the ancients who had been locked up with negators, but neither they nor the negators were what the trio was after. The book was set aside, and while the next one was heavier, it was still just half the size of the one Valia was going through. The boy got to work. After reading the summary, however, his face fell. It was a romantic story of how one lover broke the law for another and was banished to some mine or other. Obviously, there was nothing about attribute blocking. The only interesting point was that the attributes were limited to level 10 in the mine, though that point was hard to pick out among the sniveling and kissing. It felt like the pair went at it 10 times a page. It was nasty. Tailyn's interest was only piqued toward the end of the book. The new romance kindling between the prisoner and one of her overseers wasn't his cup of tea in the least, though it did strike him that the whole book was built on limiting parameters. That was what kept the criminals from escaping the location. With that said, there was one clever devil who was able to break into the protection, using a unique attribute called hacking. And while there wasn't a description, the boy liked the idea. It would have been awfully useful to be able to connect to terminals by going around their security systems. That was especially important, given he was going to lose his partially initiated status the next day. Shaking his head to clear away irrelevant thoughts, Tailyn went back to the beginning, where the prison was described. There was something there, but what? Given the author hadn't been writing a technical manual, instead putting together some slop for people who like to sit around and cry, there wasn't a lot of information about how the limitations worked. The prisoners weren't forced to wear anything, there wasn't an implement, and there wasn't even any magic. They just were suddenly restricted the moment they stepped inside the mine. Of course, everything ended well. After making a break for it, the new pair made their way back home, where the first man graciously stepped aside, and even gave the pair tears of Alron as a parting gift. After that, they all lived happily ever after. The end. But wait, there it was.
"What are tears of Alron?" Tailyn asked.
When he saw Valia and Forian stare at him uncomprehendingly, he turned to the old man.
"Keeper, are there any other books that mention them?"
The gentleman thought to himself, having just carried over the latest set of books. Scratching his beard, he headed off slowly toward the shelves. He wasn't much of a talker. They can restore attributes. Forian pulled the book out of Tailyn's hands and frowned. Student, is this some kind of joke? You spent more than an hour on this nonsense. The large letters on the cover read, Passionate Overseer, Rebellious Criminal. Valia couldn't help but laugh when she saw what Tailyn had been going through, but the boy decided to go down fighting.
"It talks about a place where parameters are limited, almost like yours, only they work—"
I could come up with 100 places like that, Forian shot back in a rage. His student's idiocy had him flying off the handle. This is a made-up story. Only the god can limit attributes, and definitely not some mine. I had you come with me to help, not read through trash like this. Remembering suddenly where he was, Forian repressed the urge to send the book hurtling off in the direction of the nearest wall. Instead, he placed it in the pile they were done with, pulled out a heavy tome, and handed it to Tailyn. These are the memoirs of a maid from back then. Read it. Time slowed to a crawl. Tailyn diligently read through each line, stunned by the descriptions of how the ancients had lived. As it turned out, they'd had flying machines, all kinds of mechanisms, and even electricity. But there wasn't much to glean from that book either. For the most part,
The mage just discussed his relationships with his colleagues, who he'd been able to set up, who had set him up, and how the provost had reacted to all of that. Yes, the person born before the Exodus, who to that day ran the academy, having built it from the ground up.
This is everything we have about the tears of Alron.
The keeper held out a worn notebook. Even magic hadn't been able to save.
Just one mention in the entire library.
Something in the old man's eyes flashed, and Tailyn realized he wasn't looking at a human. He was a machine. The keeper was one of the ancient's devices, his entire purpose being to maintain order in the library, and the boy had no doubt the contents of every last book lying on the shelves was stored in the device's memory. If Forian had had the right access, he could have just asked the keeper directly and gotten an answer to his question. Only the provost had decided good mages should be able to get to the bottom of something like that on their own, and that's why he'd limited Forian's access to the library. If he wasn't a good mage, after all, there was no point having him around in the first place.
They really existed? Forian asked in surprise, as he took the notebook. I thought the author just made them up. And they're alchemical, too.
There wasn't much to read in the notebook's 10 pages, though Forian stuck with them for a while. Symbols. There were symbols everywhere. And the god never did anything just because. It hadn't been dumb luck that the elixir had caught Tailyn's eye. That was the system's will. There wasn't much to read about the tears, but that was still enough to put aside the other books. For if anyone wishes to re-roll their attributes, returning themselves to their virginal state, and gaining a mountain of free points to use on themselves, they shall make use of a tear of Alron. Sadly, only Ysir Kale and Mark Derwin know how to make them. But while the latter may have disappeared without a trace, Ysir Kale is still breathing our air. And so, let us laden ourselves with gifts, and visit the head of Kramer, if we have blundered in our personal development. Kramer. Yet again the accursed school of assassins and its founder were popping up. Even the Absorber, may his name be cursed, had something to do with it. That explained why there were so few mentions of the elixir. The assassins had done everything they could to make sure the mages remained in the dark. Well, that just meant there was something else to discuss with Vuraga, and a couple other prisoners, all Kramer spies, captured at the academy. Forian had no doubt there was quite a bit they could shed light on. His decision made, the mage set the notebook aside. There was nothing else for them to do at the library.
Let's go. Keeper, thank you for your help. It was invaluable.
Forian nodded his students toward the door. Valia placed her tome back in the pile wistfully, sad to be walking away from the incredible knowledge to be gained there. It wasn't like anything she could learn at the academy. The entire way home, Forian said nothing, his mind working over the problem of his next move. It was only when he got to his office and sat down at his favorite desk that he turned toward his quiet students. You did good work, exactly what students should do. Tailyn, for future reference, if you're sure of something, learn how to stick to it. Leave embarrassment and stammering for the rabble. Valia, that goes for you too. Why didn't you support your partner? You're only strong when you're together. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and Patrick, Forian's servant and personal assistant, stepped in when the mage called him.
Master, you have a guest. The dean of the magic card department. He said it's critically important. I'm not... Forian, my student. How lucky to catch you at home.
Patrick was brushed to the side as the dean swept grandly into the office. Just as had been the case with the keeper, his parameters were also hidden. Dean of the magic card department, level 412. He was a bulky, overweight, middle-aged man, his neatly trimmed beard hiding his age. And while the kindly face and broad grin were enough to fool someone more trusting, Forian knew his mentor was crueler than most. "Leave us," Forian barked, as he laughed to himself. Sure, the dean had caught him at home. The older man's network of spies was legendary, and he'd known exactly where his student was.
No need for that,"
the amiable dean said, stopping the kids by the door and turning them back around.
"I'm actually here for them. As they're now students of the magic card department, the provost asked me to give them their well-earned reward."
Forian tensed up. The mage didn't like it when things happened without his knowledge, and he had neither given his students gifts nor wanted anyone else to. Actually, he'd had to go through a fairly unpleasant conversation with Valia's father, who'd been looking to make his daughter's life easier. But who could say no to the provost?
"The entire academy is abuzz with your gifts," the dean continued. "The poor dean of the artifact department has gone sleepless the past month, trying to understand the isolation cages. And as far as what the senior investigators are doing, I don't even want to think about it. The Lick Shaman is singing like a soprano at the Imperial Theater. I've never seen Master Sadil looking so overjoyed. And it's all thanks to you, children. You're heroes."
Tailyn and Valia smiled sheepishly. The praise was finding fertile soil.
"Anyway, where was I? Oh, right. Your reward."
The dean froze for a moment as he pulled a few small items out of his virtual inventory.
"Valia, come here."
The girl walked stiffly over. She knew exactly what the dean was holding, though she couldn't bring herself to believe he was going to give it to her.
"For capturing Vuraga, delivering 4 isolation cages, and bringing information about a dungeon, the provost gives you the right to collect 1 piece of named equipment," the man said, as he held out a silver symbol shaped like a 6-pointed star. As soon as the girl took it from him, a halo appeared around her. She'd reached level 30. "Did you know you're going to be the highest-level first-year student in the entire history of the Academy?"
the dean asked, unable to keep himself from bestowing another bit of praise on her.
"There hasn't been a single case like yours in the past 3,000 years. My congratulations, and I certainly hope you won't be resting on your laurels now. The record for reaching level 100 is 23 years of age, but I think you can get there faster, especially given the teacher you have."
Forian just nodded, though he didn't appreciate the way his student's eyes flashed. She would have laid down her life for the dean in that moment, and that was what made the kind-hearted man so fearsome. He was capable of and enjoyed leveraging human weaknesses. The mage made a mental note to knock the thirst for praise out of Valia. It was a failing unbefitting a mage.
"Tailyn, I have something for you, too."
Done with the girl, the dean turned towards the second spectator in his one-man theater.
2 somethings, actually. 1 for you, the other for your trainer. Are you aware that she was detained by Master Sadil?"
The boy both knew and was furious that he couldn't do anything to help Valinil. The investigators working for the Internal Investigation Service had gotten their claws into the herbalist and dragged her down into their dungeons. And while Forian had told him they were avoiding torture, they were certainly going through her every word with a fine-tooth comb.
The provost decided to grant her a pardon, and her freedom. Of course, she won't be studying here, but she'll be able to stay in the capital without any limitations. She'll even be able to assist in your training. I already signed an order giving her access to the academy. You have to admit, the school in Krabar has a lot to offer. By passing on some of what she knows to you, she ensured your survival, which is why this gift is for her. It's compensation and a reward for the cages.
The dean handed Tailyn a fairly heavy coin. While the boy's face remained impassive, everything inside him exploded. They were letting Valinil go. Even the 20,000 coins the herbalist was going to get weren't nearly as exciting as that piece of news.
"You aren't happy?" the dean asked,
evidently surprised by the boy's reaction. "I knew she'd be released, Master," Tailyn replied, as calmly as he could. "It was just a matter of time."
"A matter of time?"
The dean glanced over at Forian, as if looking for support. But Tailyn's mentor was the picture of implacability. His student was behaving exactly the way he should have.
"All right. In that case, let's move on to the part that's most important for you. As far as I'm aware, you already have 3 named items, so I don't have to explain to you what they are. And your birthday is tomorrow as well. With that in mind, I decided to improve on the provost's gift, adding a bit of my own. The Academy is grateful to you for everything you've done."
It was Tailyn's turn to get his reward. Named Star. Description: the right to acquire in the store any named item or expansion, fitting your class. You will not be able to sell or exchange it. Coins, plus 30,000. 32,770. Mage's Tent, 3. Description: universal dwelling for mages that makes life easier on their many travels. Setup takedown time, 10 seconds. Number of rooms, 3. Number of beds, 20. Kitchen, bathroom, shower. Requires access to water. Includes concealment and a level 3 protective canopy. Virtual inventory expansion. Description: additional 30 slots for your virtual inventory. Integrates automatically. Tailyn swallowed hard. While he'd been prepared for the star and coins, the tent and expansion had taken him by surprise. Thank you, Master," he mumbled, eliciting a smile from the dean and a frown from his mentor.
"Of course. You earned it."
The dean patted the boy on the shoulder, like an old friend.
"And are you aware that you're the lowest-level student to ever join the Academy? We've never had anyone at level 1. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Actually, it's funny. The 2 of you make for an odd pair, the lowest and highest levels, and I think there's something to that. Wouldn't you agree, my student?" It's all the will of the god, Forian replied. It's not for us to disagree, and if that is what was willed, it's good and right. I hope your students won't adopt your views. We have plenty of fatalists, and it would be good to get some more people in here who are used to building their own fate, the dean said with a grunt, before turning back to the children. And now, I'd like to speak with your mentor alone. Go get ready for your studies. The academy will be opening its doors in 3 days, and you both need to be ready.
Master, could I give you a gift in return? Tailyn asked to everyone's surprise. Back where I'm from, that's what we do when it's our birthday.
Interesting, the dean said, even turning around. Are you aware of the rules, boy?
Yes, Master, Tailyn replied firmly. The Mage's Encyclopedia had clearly ranked the gifts one was supposed to give different levels of mages. For example, Tailyn, as a simple student, could be given any old bauble, and he was supposed to be happy to receive it. A teacher or mentor needed something more valuable, preferably no less than rare. And to please a dean of an entire department, you really had to put in some effort. The punishment for being out of step with the gift was harsh, up to and including being banished from the academy. And while Tailyn was aware of all that, he wasn't going to remain in the debt of someone like the dean. There was no telling how that debt would need to be repaid. No, the boy was in no hurry to owe anyone anything.
In that case, I'm prepared to accept your gift, Tailyn Vlashich,
the dean said, in an official tone. The wise old man had immediately realized what the boy was up to. Forian had taught him well. He made up his mind to stick with a simple punishment for the first offense, something like a week in lockup. Here you go. Please, accept this as a token of my gratitude for everything you've done. Tailyn pulled a flower enveloped in blue sparks out of his inventory and held it out to the dean. There was a pause. The starting price for an Emilio at the auction was just 90,000 gold, so the boy wasn't giving the dean something truly valuable. But Forian still relaxed and applauded Tailyn to himself. His student had played the old rascal. Since even the black market fences only got their hands on an Emilio once a year, it was tough to find one, and the artificial plants available in the store weren't good enough for the experiments his mentor liked to run. The dean needed a real Emilio, one that had grown in the wild, and Tailyn was holding out the very same, and Forian knew its backstory. It was all that remained of Quran. A barely audible fanfare broke out, as the god recognized the worthiness of the boy's gift. You can leave. Forian sent the children out of the office, and even locked the door on the inside, activating the protection in place to thwart anyone trying to listen in on what was happening in the room. Too clever by half, the dean said. His kindly old man mask was gone, leaving him the person Forian knew so well. He may cause problems. Anyway, down to business. It's been a long time since I last heard from Mine and Zagorod. You need to head down into the tunnel and find out what's going on. Report back in 2 weeks. But don't take your students with you. I want them checked out here. Have you figured out your problem? I'm on the right track. Mentor, I need access to Asir Kale's notebook. It should have the recipe for Tears of Alron, which is something I think will help. Can you set up a meeting with the provost? You know the rules, Forian Tarn. The provost is only accessible to those who have done something noteworthy, and you spent your meeting on the library. You need a new ticket. But you have a year, so I'm sure you'll be fine. Oh, and remember that everything having to do with the door stays between us. Even the provost shouldn't hear anything about it. Report back in 2 weeks, and don't make me wait. In the meantime, we'll see what the god has to say about your students. Chapter 2. Tailyn's 12th birthday was not one he was likely to ever forget. Everything started the evening before, right after he and Valia left Forian's office. While the girl wanted to go for a walk in the nearest park, Tailyn pulled her into the temple. He had an idea he wanted to make happen. I want to unlock hacking, Tailyn said, placing a coin worth 1,000 gold on the altar, just in case. It flickered and disappeared, as the system accepted his gift. Hacking is not on the list of attributes available for receipt, Tailyn Vlashich, came the lifeless voice. It is blocked for all creatures, regardless of their initiation type. That last mention was apparently aimed at getting out in front of any claims by Tailyn to being an exception to the rule. But he wasn't about to give up. He had a plan, and he was going through with it. But I can see the description, can't I? What does it do? The god remained silent for a while. Apparently, the system hadn't been expecting that question. The attribute description isn't restricted. Hacking. Description.
an attribute used to hack players and devices in order to gain control and access to locked sections. Replaced by Marauder.
Tailyn, let's go,
Valia whispered. The girl wasn't comfortable being in the temple and hearing the system's voice.
Hold on,
Tailyn said, before turning back to the god.
Marauder doesn't let you break into machines, and it only worked with dead players. That isn't it. Replaced doesn't mean deleted, right? So the attribute is still around in the world. I have a named star, and I want to exchange it for hacking.
The silence lasted even longer that time. As it dragged on, Valia exchanged the star she'd received for a mage's weapon. Her armor was good enough, she announced, and Matilda would always come in handy, particularly for knocking some sense into Tailyn. That's not enough, Tailyn Vlashich, the system replied, before repeating, the attribute is blocked for all creatures, regardless of their initiation type.
You can take all my levels down to the first, Tailyn said, dropping his trump card on the table.
Valia stared at him in shock.
He was talking crazy. What levels? What was going on?
That's a worthy offer. I accept your gift, Tailyn Vlashich, said the god, which elicited a wave of excitement from the boy. He jumped for joy and threw his arms around the shocked girl who had no clue what was happening. It had worked. Tailyn was having a hard time believing it, but it had worked. You spent a named star, 1,000 gold, and all your levels except your first to unlock an attribute. Attention. Error detected. The algorithm for processing exceptions malfunctioned. A level 1 player at the first initiation stage gained the ability to spend non-existent levels. Query created to update the functionality. Query granted. Algorithm modified. You discovered an error in the game functionality and earned a reward. The creator returned your named star and is permitting you to receive a blocked attribute. Mission update. Ancient history. You learned another name for the god, the creator. That is the one who created the game and filled it with magic. You spent 1,000 gold to unlock an attribute. Hacking 1. Received. Hacking. Description. An attribute used to hack players and devices in order to gain control and access to locked sections. Integrates with scanner for remote access, as well as enhancement. Combines with Marauder when analyzing corpses. The description had changed, but Tailyn liked it even better that way. The boy was able to use his enhancements on his Marauder via hacking, and it didn't matter how complicated it was if it worked.
Would you care to explain what's going on?
Valia burst out, as soon as they left the temple.
What's a creator? And what was that nonsense you were spouting? It's something I read in that book today, and I wanted to see if it was true. The whole thing was similar. The main character was a girl at level 5, who gave the god her levels in order to get a regeneration potion. Of course, she whined about paying that much for the next few chapters, and everyone felt bad for her, but I thought that might work here, too. Anyway, I wasn't risking anything, since I don't have any levels in the first place. And it worked. I got the attribute, and all I have to do now is figure out how to use it. Wait, so you mean to tell me you actually read that book? You weren't just paging through it? Valia asked with a sly smile. What was it about? Don't even ask, Tailyn replied, blushing as he did. If you took out all the hugging and kissing, it would be 3 times shorter. Valia laughed, but she regained her composure, stepped in front of the boy, and blurted out some bad news without looking him in the eye. Father's having a dinner party to celebrate your initiation. Tomorrow, at 6. Again? Tailyn asked, his face falling. You promised me that would be the one and only time. Tailyn's introduction to Valia's family had been a fiasco. A week before, the meeting had been set up, and the boy still felt embarrassed about the whole thing. Of course, Valia had done her best to get him ready, telling him about all the different forks, spoons, and bowls, but his provincial upbringing had reared its head. As one of the guests had noted, you can take the boy out of the village, but you can't take the village out of the boy. Again, Valia sighed. I wasn't able to get out of it. And this time, Father is planning on inviting the whole clan so we can introduce you. You'll be there? The girl looked pleadingly at Tailyn. I don't have much of a choice, do I? The boy asked sadly. The only reply was a shake of the girl's head. Okay, I'll be there. What I got from that book today is that you need to always have your girls back, no matter how difficult that is. Together? Valia took a step closer and pressed herself against Tailyn. For life, the boy replied, giving her a kiss. See you tomorrow. Thanks to the department dean's recommendation, Tailyn had been given a room at the academy. Nobody was allowed into the main building during the holidays, and the students were being housed in small servant accommodations. In fact, They were classed as general workers and took care of the inner garden. Every morning from 9 to 12, a few dozen of the Empire's less...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?